We had all sorts of uncertainty this year. It's been a big year for being uncertain.
So the market is underestimating these risks.
I think the market is underestimating the risks. Maybe the market is right. And I hope the market is right. And these volatility control indices are actually pretty well set up for this kind of life cycle example. And so you will start exiting the market before the biggest shocks come.
You're saying that uncertainty is going to rise at the beginning of 2025,
Right.
But at the turn of this year, which part hit hardest, would you say?
You know, we had all sorts of uncertainty this year. It's been a big year for being uncertain. We have the tariffs, we've got the anti-science effect in the U.S., we have the deportation of immigrants in the U.S., there are 2 wars that are going on. Volatility has picked up all those things. And these models pay attention to it on a day-by-day basis. How is the volatility moving? And when is it high and when is it low? And some of these events produced a great deal of volatility. But none of them have actually lasted that long. And so the thing that surprises me is that the markets are not thinking that these are continuing events, that they think that we'll take care of them. But I worry that these events are not going to be taken care of in a way that makes the economy stronger and lets us keep our growth patterns to happen.
In other words, the market is underestimating these risks.
I think the market is underestimating the risks. But maybe the market is right. And I hope the market is right.
It is right, yeah. We all hope the market is right. So let's first start with the market swing and volatility we've seen this year, looking back through the previous years, whether it is market volatility caused by the Liberation Day or it's geopolitical risks like Ukraine crisis or trade tensions, or more recently an AI bubble burst concern. How can we understand your ARCH model in explaining these chaos?
Well, the ARCH model is designed to predict volatility. And it does this better at short horizons than long horizons. So it's been really the beginning of a lot of volatility research, which has developed many, many different kinds of models. And so each model has a slightly different performance, but basically they all work pretty well. And so what we really use them for is measuring volatility rather than thinking about it as a forecast. So the models show where the volatility is high and where the volatility is low. And all the events you talked about are part of it.
I see. So let's delve into different factors one after another.
Okay.
Let's do the geopolitical first. So as the Trump administration's tariff policies gradually unfold and ripple through the global economy, we're asking this: does this trade war represent, or to some extent represent, a structural shift in geopolitical volatility that is here to stay?
I wish I knew. This trade war is unprecedented in our recent history, certainly. The last time this was really an important effect was, I think, the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which was one of the precipitants of the Great Depression of the 1930s. So tariffs have not been an important part of policy. And most economists, including me, think that tariffs are not a good tool for political arrangements. And the reason is because free trade is actually very beneficial for both countries when they trade. And we have developed a nearly free trade system that has been managed by the WTO and has been very successful for the last 50 years or so. So tariffs are a new event. And I don't think they're going to be a permanent event because the problem with tariffs is it hurts both countries. If free trade helps both countries, then a tariff hurts both countries. When we put a tariff on goods, it's the American people that pay this tariff. But it hurts the exporting country too, because it means that they can't export as much. So, and the host country doesn't get to buy the products that it would want to buy if the price were a little bit lower. There is no provision for tariffs under the presidential control in the Constitution. The U.S. Supreme Court is trying to decide what to do about this at this moment. They may say that the president does not have the authority to execute these tariffs, but we don't know the answer to that yet. My feeling is economically they will not be successful and they will then be stopped. My feeling is economically they will not be successful and they will then be stopped.
Shall we view AI hallucinations as a form of technological volatility?
I don't think so.
A little bit more on AI. This AI is now attempting to predict and even generate market movements. So do you see AI as a new player that adds risk to the table, or is just an effective tool just helping us to discover hidden rules?
There are different ways AI gets used. I think my expectation is that it will be just another way of discovering rules that are helpful in understanding what is likely to happen. And who's going to ask AI this question? Some importer or exporter is going to say, what do you think is going to happen? You'll get an answer. Hopefully this importer or exporter will then ask AI, why do you think that's the answer? You'll get a discussion of the facts the AI knows and actually what the AI doesn't know. And so the decision will be made by the individual, not by AI itself. There are some trading platforms where AI can actually execute trades, I think. And that's a case where the kind of hallucinations you were asking about could actually move the market. We already had things like that in the market. We called them fat finger trades, where somebody pushes the dollar sign instead of the penny sign, and then all of a sudden the trade is executed at too big a level. That might happen with AI.
But as we rely more and more on AI, shall we view AI hallucinations as a form of technological volatility?
I don't think so. I think, AI it makes random choices. I mean, it is a probabilistic model. It says, what's the probability that this word will be followed by that word? And so it doesn't always give the same answer. It's not easy to quantify that risk in the same way that you quantify the risk of security market movements, for example.
But do you think in the future economic models, we need to account for a new variable? Let's say not just how investor thinks, not just the investor psychology, but also AI psychology, like what algorithms think and react.
If the AI thinks something different from what the person that runs the AI thinks, then it's that person that's making the decision. They're going to decide whether or not to listen to AI. And don't you think we have much worse sources of information than AI? I mean, we have all social media, we have political rhetoric, which is often very badly informed. And AI, at least it comes from an information body that they are trained on, and it's a way of summarizing. I think of it as a way of summarizing information for you. And if you don't think it's summarized correctly, you can really ask it questions.
Mm-hmm. As we move to the AI agent, like a lot of help you to make a lot of decisions and do operations for you, do you think that AI would maximize to some extent the volatility, or it will help to minimize it?
I assume that you would tell your AI machine to minimize volatility because mostly that's a goal in financial markets, is to avoid risk and not to take it. So it's up to the person that's employed and designed the AI machine to make sure that that's the question that's asked.
In the realm of economics or economic research, how does your current research interface with this AI waves?
So I do econometrics, which is statistical analysis of data. The thing that's closest to that is machine learning. Machine learning is one of the tools that AI has access to, but it's not the same as the large language models. And machine learning has some capabilities which econometrics is not particularly fully used. So there are possibilities of expanding econometric analysis using some of the new developments in machine learning. And I'm very excited about that. I don't expect, and certainly AI helps with programming. It's a very good coder and probably makes fewer mistakes than I do when I'm coding. So that's good news. But I don't think it's going to really be another intellectual force that we're going to have to take into account. You're saying that AI thinks the renminbi should be more valuable than the market does. Mm-hmm. Is that going to make the price go up? I don't think so.
I see. So there is still a long way to watch.
Yes, I think that we're only at the beginning of the AI, and we'll have to see how much people rely on it.
Mm-hmm. But the thing is that AI is fast moving, developing. That's why
it's moving so fast. I agree. We call them fat finger trades. That might happen with AI.
In a world full of risks and volatilities, what is your suggestion for ordinary viewers? As central bankers and policymakers learn the lessons from previous years, whether it's pandemic or it's trade tensions, geopolitical risks that we just mentioned, what is the one core concept about risk that they most urgently need to upgrade or update in their playbook?
Well, one of the things I think policymakers don't take into account is the risk of risk. In other words, risk itself can act to slow the economy. People, when they face risk, are less likely to invest, to purchase, to do things. And so when the risk goes up, it slows down behavior. And we saw this with the tariffs. Typically, when the tariff risk is there, people didn't buy as much because they weren't sure whether they were going to face tariffs or not. We were going to buy a car. We didn't know whether there would be a tariff on it. We didn't do it. You know, it's just simple things like that. Policy should be designed not as shocks to the system, but as gradual, planned movements in the system. And I think that's much more efficient. It gives businesses and households a chance to adjust and change their expectations of what's going to happen and behave in ways which are very efficient and don't waste resources. So I think that's one of the lessons from all this.
Mm-hmm. But just let me to add a little bit of follow-up on that. A lot of the economic research that we've seen in past decades or under the circumstances of globalization, but in a world that is seemingly going toward a world of fragmentation, do you think volatilities will go up? And then, just like you mentioned, policymakers shouldn't make decisions or put out policies that will shock the market. But in a world of fragmentation, doesn't that increases the chances of that kind of shocking policy?
I don't think fragmentation is a good idea. I think it's reasonable for everybody to have their own opinions and do their own trades, but fragmentation means that they're not coordinated. They don't maybe know what each other is doing. And I think more information is almost always a good thing. So I don't think fragmentation is a good outcome. And I don't think policies which increase fragmentation are likely to be good policies.
We talk about geopolitical risk, policy risk, and also AI a little bit. But what do you think is the single most underestimated risk at this moment? Is this a debt crisis or climate risk, crisis of trust, or anything else? I know there is too much risk in the world.
There are so many out there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think has been surprising is that faced with these geopolitical risks, which are, I believe, much more severe than we have seen for quite a long time, mm-hmm. faced with political movements which are very different from what we've seen before and are changing institutions in a large way. And this is true for the U.S. in particular, but it's also true in China, and I think it's also true in Europe. And I think all of these events are major changes in the way the economic system is likely to work going forward. I think the unappreciated aspect of this is that the financial markets are not more worried about it than they are. I think that the financial markets have sort of said, this is all going to come out okay. And they continue to appreciate gradually. I have been expecting more of a correction in response to these risks. And so I think that's the thing that most surprises me.
Have you asked the question why? Why the financial market is so far feel a complacency?
There are some answers which are used in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. You've probably heard the expression taco.
Trump will always chicken out.
Yes, exactly. So that's one answer, that these policies are not really, although they look outlandish, when the end comes, they won't have happened. And so I think taco does not fully answer this question. And I think the market is responding to the tax incentives that are implicit in a lot of the regulations and the big, beautiful bill that the U.S. Congress has passed. And I think that it kind of thinks that deregulation of climate and deregulation of pollution and deregulation of safety measures and so forth will be good for business. I don't think really ultimately it will be. And so I feel like the market is kind of missing that.
In a world full of volatilities and risk, what is your suggestion for ordinary viewers, and how should they build their life portfolios to better build resilience against these volatilities?
What the market would do is, and I think maybe this is what it is doing, is it's just holding the position because they want to take advantage of all the increases that can happen. And then when there is a new event which is highly volatile or maybe a big risk, they quickly get out of their position. So it's a kind of a market timing solution. If you wanted somebody to do this for you, you'd have to pay them a lot, and they'd have to be very good at it. So this is not really a strategy that's easily available. There are, however, products which sound like that, which work like this. Mm-hmm. There are volatility control indices, which are now being used in insurance and various other things. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they forecast volatility, for example, a day ahead. And if that forecast is higher than some constant level that you're aiming for, you don't invest as much that day. And if it's lower than this constant level you're looking for, you overinvest. In other words, you might take a 110% position in the asset you're talking about. And these volatility control indices are actually pretty well set up for this kind of life cycle example, because when volatility increases, typically it starts small and then it gets bigger. And so you will start exiting the market before the biggest shocks come. There's no guarantee that you get out in time, but historically they work very well, and actually in real time they're doing quite well. So I think there might be application like that would be useful for the life index. You'd probably want to do something which was quite diversified, but then you could put the volatility target on your diversified index. Mm-hmm.
I hope that's useful for our audience, for our viewers watching this show. We touch upon several factors, whether it's geopolitical, AI, or policy risks. If we were to sit down exactly 1 year from now, what do you think? What do you hope would be the headline of the year? Or in other words, what is your biggest hope or biggest fear down the road?
Well, let me start with the biggest fear. I would fear that some of these wars would accelerate. I fear that we're going to have inflation and unemployment at the same time. That's one of the things that comes from tariffs, stagflation. And I fear that we're not going to be addressing climate change in a useful way. But I do have a hope, because if they could get along well, the U.S. excess demand would help China's deficient demand. It would reduce our inflation and reduce their deflation, China's deflation. The two of them could stop the wars around the world. And the two of them, if they worked together, could solve climate change. It would be breathtaking change in the geopolitical world.
Mm-hmm. And that's not only for our two countries, but also a win-win situation for the whole world.
It's a win-win for the whole world.
Let's hope for the best.
Hope for the best.